Devi and I are becoming less and less village-centric, and we probably spend less than half a year at the village from this time on. Swamiji asked us a couple of years, 2-3 years ago, if we could spend 6 months a year in India because the work is expanding so rapidly there. And we haven't yet been able to manage that, but we'll be spending about 4.5 months each year. And we'll go in the fall, and then again, fall being September, this year we'll be in India from September until the beginning of December. And then we'll go back again in February and be there until the end of March. And mostly the fall trip this year will be in the north. And we were just saying that for the first time we have really established a home for us in India. So we have this beautiful ashram in Gurgaon, which is where we have been from the beginning. That's where Swamiji had his house, and it's a 5-minute walk from where Swami had his house. So we have this beautiful ashram. Imagine a space about half again as big as this, but 3 stories. And then imagine a little courtyard, and then there's another one just like that. So 2 of them together. And so Devi and I will have a little suite in one side of that.
In India, we don't mean S-W-E-E-T.
Yeah.
S-U-I-T-E.
It'll be
a sweet.
Yeah, sweet.
But we're
Yeah.
trying to avoid the sweet part of the
Yeah. So, at any rate, we're setting up to have a sense that we live in India rather than that we visit there. And so, mainly where we'll stay will be in Gurgaon or in Pune, in the community there. And when we're there, we stay in Swamiji's house. And
So we'll have 2 home bases, one in the
Yeah.
north and one in the south. And it just makes it a lot easier because last time we just traveled pretty much the whole 3 months we were there. And we were always staying with other people. And it gets to be tiring, always being a guest and, where's the bathroom, where's the lights, you're on a constant learning curve. And
Last year had a particular purpose because it was our first visit after Swamiji's passing. And for the Indians more so, I would say, than in the West, there's a very strong sense of lineage of who the spiritual leader is, and they're more attuned to that. So Devi and I basically needed to travel everywhere just to establish the continuity, the fact that Ananda was continuing and was continuing strongly. And so it was almost like a ambassadorial trip, one would say. And we did a lot of going to lunches, going to dinners, to teas, and being with people. So, and as well as speaking in fairly large venues in each of the places. This year it will be different, I think. We're planning to stay more this fall in NCR, and there we'll be giving a kind of a 4-week series in Gurgaon, and then also a 4-week series concurrently in Delhi. And we have a 3rd center there in Noida. In fact, they just got a new property, we haven't seen it yet, in Noida.
in Delhi.
And in Delhi too. And we saw the one in Delhi under construction, but it's a huge step up. So anyway, everywhere in India, the work is expanding extremely quickly. And so Swami really, he saw that as being both a fulfillment of, the cycle of master and our masters coming from there, coming to the West, and then him returning in 2002 with the energy of Master and reestablishing Master. A lot of people have read the autobiography, but by and large, Master was not considered quite so much among the great masters of India. It was like a favorite son who went to the West, and they were proud of him because he was accepted in the West. But that's a different level than understanding the spiritual greatness of him. And so Swamiji, I think, he always saw his mission as completing the mission of Master, not so much that he had his own thing to do, but it was the completion of what Master had started. And so coming back to India and reestablishing, helping to reestablish Master as one of the great avatars of this age was a really important thing. And so I think Ananda's work is going to continue in that way.
Yeah, Swami said he felt that India would grow very quickly, would be much bigger than even what we're doing in the West. But also to kind of give a geographical thing, so Daya and Keshava, many of you know them, they were just given a beautiful new center in Delhi itself, where we'll be staying there too. And luckily, you know, driving from, as somebody said, the distance between Gurgaon and Delhi is maybe a 20-minute walk or an hour and a half drive. The traffic is just so terrible, but they just put in an overhead transit, which takes 20 minutes. And I think you need to turn down the sound on her thing because we're getting her eating her breakfast very loud. And so we can take the transit, so we'll teaching, rather than doing the hour and a half drive from Gurgaon to Delhi, we'll just take the 20-minute overhead transit, and then we'll do classes in both places. And we're just trying to see how can we sustain a life in India long term? How can we be effective? How can we reach all of our growing population there without undue kind of toll on our bodies? But we also then geographically, you all know and love Tushti and Surendra. They're heading up the Pune community with Narayani and Shurjo. And just, you know, being in India is just not easy. It's a challenge on every level. Spiritually, it's a challenge because it's so great spiritually, and you just want to be totally open to it. Physically, it's a challenge because it's such a mess physically, and you have to deal with that. Emotionally and mentally, it's. I wouldn't say it's a challenge at all. I think there are no people in the world as great as the Indians. I just have to say that their consciousness is. It's just naturally elevated from a servant person to a Maharani. There's just extraordinary quality there. But so then that's then the north. And I was saying about Tushti and Surendra. They just landed running. I really didn't ever see anybody integrate into India the way they did. You know, everyone else was like, okay, I think we can do this. It was like with them, it was like, what? What's the problem? You know, and they just. And so they're really picking up what's going on in the Pune community. We just got an email from them that they're forward thinkers. So we've been trying to get a temple there, and you know the money hasn't been there. And, anyway, they have some plans to build a temporary classroom temple, which would serve the needs, and I think it's just a wonderful idea. And then we have centers. Dharmarajan and Dharmini are doing a wonderful job in Chennai. His family is from Chennai. Iyer is it's funny, you know, there are billions of people in India, but it's like Iyer. Everybody knows, like in the Chennai area, the Brahminical Iyers, everybody knows it. They know. We were trying to get into a restaurant, they said, well, I'm sorry, we're crowded. And Dharmaraj just said, well, I think I have a reservation. Ire? Oh, Ire, yes, come. And then Hari and Roma are in Bangalore. And they had a little center, which we knew we had outgrown, but nobody was quite ready to take the next step to get a bigger one. And then the landlord didn't want to renew the lease, so they, which was a real blessing. So they took care of it. They found a beautiful house. It's not a done deal yet, but it looks like it will be about more than twice as big as what they have now for just a little more cost and a much better part of Bangalore. So, and then in Calcutta, for those of you who know Steve Berry, we have a center there, and Jyotish and I will be going and doing a Kriya initiation in Masters 4 Gorpur Road while we're there in the family home. And so it's just, it's really fabulous. And then right now, Dharma Das and Nirmala, who are based in Sacramento, are doing a 2-week tour in Russia. And people were laughing, but it's the truth. We have our first Ananda center in Siberia, truly. Wow. Not a joke. Siberia is a big country. There are uninhabitable parts and there are habitable parts.
So there's a new meaning to being sent to Siberia.
Right. Yeah, in fact, Dharma Das and Nirmala were the first ones to be sent to Siberia.
And they did first they spoke at a big yoga conference there with thousands of people. And then they did a weekend retreat with our own people for Kriya, and there were about 40. And now they're in Moscow this weekend and doing programs there. So, and Asha will be going in the fall to New Zealand. Dunbar is going as well, I believe. And, seeing if we can open new territory there. And very possibilities of new property and things in Mexico. We just Skyped with an Ashini. So it's like Swami, I don't know, he left and he pulled the plug out. And it's like without a lot of effort, it's all happening. And so it's just very exciting. And
I would say the opportunities are happening without a lot of effort. Taking advantage of those opportunities is another matter. So anyway, Ananda is doing really well in terms of expanding, but expansion of numbers, that isn't really the key. The real key is the deepening of devotees, the deepening of people acting as channels for Master's light, God's light to flow through. Really for all of us, we were giving a talk to the, last weekend we had a group of center leaders and meditation group leaders at Ananda Village. And so we were talking with them, but we always have, and Master had, a quantitative work to do and a qualitative work to do. And the quantitative work, we all know about his big tours around the country and thousands of people coming and lines around the block trying to get into Madison Square Gardens. And if you read about his time and his schedule, he was incredibly active. He would do, he'd have a breakfast meeting, a lunch meeting, an afternoon meeting, and then a class in the evening, and he would do that day after day after day in a city, and then he'd move to the next city and do the same thing again. So this enormous energy that went out to magnetize, he was magnetizing the whole West as he was doing that. So it wasn't just about classes or talks or so on. He was
West meaning America, not just the West of America.
Yeah, no, the whole Western civilization, because it came from there also to Europe. But after he got Mount Washington, he wrote to Rajarshi, and he said, the time now has come to stop the spiritual campaigns, as he called them, and concentrate on the serious devotees. And I'll establish now a presence in Mount Washington and let them come to me. Well, we think in terms of the thousands, but during Master's lifetime, there were probably less than 100 monks and nuns that lived at Mount Washington and then Encinitas, and eventually Lake Shrine also. But a small group, half the size of the village, not much bigger than the group living here. And so, but that was the qualitative work that Master was doing, where he had the people with him long enough to be able to pass on the energy. So the work is always spiritual. We tend to think in terms of the fact that the work is places and projects and outer things, but that's never the work, because those outer things are really just a tapestry on which to work to change consciousness. And most important of all, and it's something we don't talk about a whole lot publicly because it's not the right thing to talk about publicly, but most of all, the work that we do is for us. It's not for others. We have to concentrate on offering to others, because the real work, the real spiritual work, is the dissolving of the ego. And if we don't concentrate on giving to others, then that reinforces the ego. What am I getting? What can I have? Who am I? How are they looking at me? Anyway, I won't go into that. But the reason that we have to have our consciousness outward is not really for others. It's for us to dissolve the sense of separation from others and expand our consciousness. Because eventually we will wake up to the fact that there never were others. There never was anything outside of ourselves. And so everything is about that awakening. But the process of that awakening, as long as we're still in the delusion that we're separate, then it's more important for us to serve others who we delusively think are separate from us than to think about what this ego is getting from it. And so the real work that we're doing is really for us. And it's really, really important that those of us who have dedicated our lives basically to waking up from delusion, and doing that through deep attunement to Master, through sadhana, through meditation, and through service, because that's the way Master defined his path. If he defined his path as deep meditation and withdrawal from society, we'd all be up in the Himalayas and not worrying about service. And so, but what the Guru brings to us is the pathway that will lead to our freedom. And so service is not really about service in a sense. Service is another kind of meditation or spiritualizing and freeing ourselves. So as I was saying, it's really important, because there aren't that many of us in the world who are seriously dedicated to this. It's important that we support each other and that we, do everything we can. You know, I would say that Ananda, the reason for the existence of Ananda, is simply this. It is to create an optimal environment for your spiritual awakening, or for my spiritual awakening, but for each one of us. And so it's really important in that creation of that optimal environment, that we support each other in every individual's growth. And if we do that, then that magnetizes the core and empowers each of us then to help others. But it's always about consciousness and uplifting consciousness. And it's easy to get caught in, we have this new center here and a new center there, and thousands are coming here and thousands are coming there. That is important, because to have goals or intentions and work hard to do them is important, but it's important not to accomplish those goals. It's important because there is a spiritual transformation that goes on as you work toward doing good for others and attuning to Master.
One of the things that was very inspiring that came out of our meeting with the different meditation group leaders, and there were about 25 that gathered, and some were from Maine and Rhode Island and Boston and Texas, and then a lot from California. But one woman told a really wonderful story, for those of you who know her, Jackie. She's the meditation group leader in Fresno. She said we could share it. And Jyotish started off when we were talking with them by saying, you know how Ananda started? Ananda was 6 people in a little 2-bedroom apartment of Swamiji's in San Francisco.
Smaller than what we're sitting in right now.
And he said, and sometimes there were 10 people, and sometimes there was plus Swamiji, and sometimes there was 1 person and Swamiji. And that's how it started. And so it's not about numbers, it's not about growth, it's not about projects. It's, as Jyotish has been saying, it's about serving the individual and making everyone who comes feel welcome and embraced. And so Jackie told this story that when she first started the center in Fresno, she still had a career. She's retired now, but she was working and had a professional life. And then one night, it was the night of the meditation at her home, but she still had a lot of work to do at the office. So she was sort of praying that nobody would come and she could get back to her work. But then one woman came, and she was new, never been before. And Jackie said, well, since there's only 1 person, maybe we won't have the meditation tonight, and here's our literature, and goodbye. And then she went back, she went to the office. And everybody kind of froze, and we thought, God, how many times have I done, if not that, something like that? I'm too busy to stop because my projects are important. And here's a soul, but they're not me. Their needs aren't my needs. And so she said, then weeks went by and she started thinking, that was a terrible thing to do. That could have been the turning point in that woman's life. And I shut the door on her, but she didn't have any way to get in touch with her. She didn't leave a name, but it ate at her, and she said, I tried to make up for it. I tried to be there. I never did that again. And then 14 years later, she came to Spiritual Renewal Week in Ananda Village, and there was that woman. She had somehow found a contact with Ananda, and Jackie went up to her and said, I'm so sorry. I let you down. And the woman didn't say, well, that was okay. She said, it was a big thing for me to come that day, and I really wanted to learn how to meditate, and I kind of was nervous to come, and then I came and you pushed me away, and I almost didn't pursue a spiritual life, but I did. And she told the story, and everyone kind of could relate to it on some level or another, because we all do that. I know sometimes I'm trying to get from point A to point B to point C, but then there's all these people in the way. And I just think, no, I've got to get to point B. and you just can't afford to do that spiritually. And anyway, it was and we asked Jackie if we could share that story. And she said, yes, I want everyone to benefit from my mistake. So anyway, it's a good lesson. But, as much as Ananda expands, and that's God's will. It's all God's will. Everything that happens, if we lose it, whatever happens. But I think as long as we can just follow in Swami's footsteps of saying every single person's well-being is important, and for them to feel that I am a channel of love and support for them, that's the work, really. And if we're not doing that, then what are we doing? And anyway, it's really thrilling, and
I have to share because that's the kind of mind I have. I just thought.
I always shudder when he says that's
Yes.
the kind of mind I have.
Right.
Oh.
And well, you should at this point. But kind of sharing with others. In the Italian version of the paraphrase of Jesus' words, if someone kisses you on one cheek, offer the other cheek also. It just, when she was saying, you know, trying to get from point A to point B, in Italy it might take 15 minutes to exit a room like this because there's a connection. People want to make that personal connection, and I've learned a lot of patience from that, and it's a very good lesson. You just
When we first went to help in Italy, we were, Swami asked us to come, and our son was with us. He was about 6 at the time. And we went to visit this group in Sorrento, southern Italy, this charismatic Christian group. And boy, if you, as they say, if you moved, they kissed it, you know. And so our son would hide under the pews so at the church. So that 15 people kissed me before I even stood up.
But we want to hear how things are here, how everyone's doing, how everything is doing.
Questions, comments?
I just have a question about Italy, just Dharmadas and Nirmala going there. Shivani, used
mean
to travel.
Russia? Yeah.
Sorry. Shivani used to travel around and do all that. Is she still doing that?
She does, but she's been focused on the movies for the last year.
Okay.
And somehow, it's funny, Dharmadas and Nirmala, someone we were telling Diva Gangamata, last year Kirtani and Anand were supposed to go to Russia, but then Kirtani's mom died and they had to come back to America. And so, all these programs were scheduled, and they were trying to find somebody. Shivani was, I think, in India. People, there was nobody in Europe to go. So then they asked Dharmadas and Nirmala if they could go, and they were free and could do it.
Great.
And somehow they made a connection, though. It was like the Russian people just loved them. And I don't know if it was the music or what it was, but they just were begging for Dharmadas and Nirmala to come back. And so, it just everyone. Some scars we have, and when you see they sent us some photos of the different satsangs, and you could tell they just feel very much at home.
So once again, how are you all doing?
How feels it?
I'll just say that I'm Elizabeth. I met you.
Yes,
last
we
time.
remember we met you at the
So
church.
wonderful to have you here.
Oh, thank you.
And
I think probably I can speak for everyone. It's so wonderful to have you both here.
and it was so. Anyway, we've just had very full days, all of us. And but I joined the Ananda online. So I got to see you yesterday and the day before. Before I go to bed. And it means a lot to me.
That's so nice. Yeah, the online classes are just amazing. They're such a wonderful venue. We did what Elizabeth was referring to is we have the virtual community. So we did a satsang Wednesday night for there. And usually when we do the webinars, we're just looking at a little camera. But because people were gonna be on screen, Melody turned the computer around and people would pop up, and then they would type comments on the side, and we could see their comments. And so we were just sharing, and then one woman wrote, Krista wrote, "Is something wrong with Devi? Should we all be praying for her?" I said, "No." And then Melody wrote back, "It's a very hot day today. I don't know." Anyway, I don't know what she was perceiving.
Maybe she's perceiving the end of a 12-hour day, because in the morning we started out at 7 in the morning with a satsang for India,
Oh,
because it's 12 and a half hours difference, and so.
But if you do it differently in India, it's supposed to start at 7, but they say, oh, but no one will really come till 7:15. So the first 15 minutes is just a silent meditation. So
If they ever catch on, they won't wait till 7.
Yeah.
But, you know, speaking of that, I just got an email yesterday or 2 days ago from, there's a team, a woman, Katyani, and a man, Amit, they've just set up the online with Ananda India. So they have their own programming, because it's hard to do the time switch, you know.
Mhm.
So they've got all sorts of classes that are ongoing, and that'll be just great for you.
We have now over 10,000 people who've signed up for Ananda Online and are taking various courses. And we're just in the process now of putting together a 12-week course on health and healing. And so, like the leadership course, we have people all around who have especially areas of expertise. And so that'll be coming out in a couple of months. And then next year we're going to do a course on yoga, meditation, and science. And you know, there are certain people like Dr. Peter who has concentrated on brain and brain changes, and there's a man named Morley in Seattle who has studied a lot of the scientific application of meditation and verification of the effectiveness of it. So
Oh, and one thing, not at all related, but this has been a long, just thinking of Swamiji, it's a long delayed project. This was due out a year, it's a year late, so we're kind of on Indian time now. But this is the memorial book for Swamiji, and we saw the proofs of it. It's at the printer now. It'll probably be ready for its spiritual renewal week in August. It's going to be worth waiting for. It is just magnificent. It's, you know, coffee table size, really good quality paper, hundreds and hundreds of photos of Swami, many of which I've never seen. And then Tejindra, the wonderful graphic artist in Italy, did the layout and design. And then Naidruva and Anandi worked to compile excerpts from Swami's lectures and talks. So it's, I don't know, maybe 20 different themes.
more than that, I think.
Maybe 50,
Yeah.
yeah. And anyway, it's really a treasure. So that'll be,
Hopefully by spiritual
yeah,
renewal week.
it just got delayed, one thing after another, but finally it's, it'll be coming out. And it's something that everyone will really want to have. It's just beautiful, really truly doing him honor. And then I think you know as well, many of you came to the dedication of the groundbreaking for Swami's Moksha Mandir. It's very fun. You can go on ananda.org and there's a section on the Moksha Mandir, and they're posting at least weekly, sometimes many times a week, photos and videos of the project as it develops. And it's really fun. They're doing massive earth-moving and reinforcing the crystal hermitage because the foundations were crumbling. And we had, you know, just hiring professional teams to do that kind of work because we don't have people who can do that with big equipment. But they were working on these slopes that just went straight down to the Yuba River, and, you know, with these huge pieces of equipment, and, anyway, it was like, kind of a miracle that everything went well, but it did. And then Nakula shared with us a letter that was so beautiful. Nakula Cryer is the project coordinator, and we all know Nakula. And he's doing a fabulous job, just a fabulous job of doing that. But he contracted with a man to do a company, local company in Nevada County, to do the plaster work on the Moksha Mandir. And this is a company that he has worked with for more than 20 years when he was a contractor. And he used to be run by a father, now his son is doing it. And so, you know, they said, can you do the plaster work? And they were going back and forth with bids and prices and, you know, all these things. And then the man, so the man sent in the bid with this, cost this much. It was just a professional letter from a, you know, plasterer. And then at the end there was a paragraph that Nakula shared with us, and he said, my father and I were looking more closely at the plans and why this building is going to be built and who it's being built to protect. And we want, it makes me cry. He said, we want you to know we will do the finest work we have ever done in our life, and it's an honor to do this building, and this will be the best plaster work in Nevada County. This is the plaster. Anyway, so it's drawing that kind of energy, and we will dedicate the building itself next May. And if you all can mark your calendars now, because it's, you know, Willow Kushler was the project coordinator for that weekend. She's really a remarkable person, and she'll be the coordinator for next year. And we were just saw her the other day, and she said, we need to start meeting about the project. Whenever you want, we'll meet. And there'll be a lot of people coming from India, we hope. Maybe Sri Kartikayan can come. And, just a lot of the Daljit Singh, Pia Singh, a lot of the important people that have helped us build the work in India to dedicate that.
Will the contractors be able to come?
Absolutely.
Probably, yeah.
Absolutely. It'd be nice to honor them.
Yeah.
Yeah.